Hey babes, welcome or welcome back to and everything in between. I'm Victoria, your host and guide for navigating the beautiful chaos of your 20s. Whether you're building your dream career, figuring out relationships, or just trying to find you, this is your space for self-growth, real talk, and a little fun along the way. Let's dive into it and everything in between. So, I know this might sound a little cheesy, but I really love Valentine's Day. I get it. Love shouldn't be limited to just one day, and for some people, it can be a harsh reminder of how single they may be. But for me, it's just an excuse to be extra intentional about showing love and affection in a way I don't always get to do every day. And I have spent the last 3 Valentine's Days with my partner, and honestly, I just love having a reason to celebrate love in all of its forms. With that being said, I also get why some people roll their eyes at the idea of dedicating just one day to love. On a daily basis, there are a million other things to worry about besides sprinkling a trail of rose petals leading to a heart-shaped box of chocolates on your bed. But it's really nice, and it's something that I love so much, cheese and all. But since February is officially the month of love, I thought it would be the perfect time to talk about love languages. We all give and receive love in different ways, and love languages help us understand those differences. Whether it's in romantic relationships, friendships, or even family dynamics, understanding love languages can help us strengthen our connections and make sure the people in our lives feel loved in a way that actually resonates with them. Before we even get into love languages themselves, which is a very big topic, let's take a second to define love itself. Now, I could go the dictionary route and tell you what Merriam-Webster says, but love is something that feels different for everyone. For me, love isn't just a feeling, it's quite literally a verb. It's the choices you make every single day to show up for someone, to nurture and care for them, and to be intentional about your relationship with them. It's active. It requires effort. And that's where love languages comes in. The concept of love languages was first introduced in the 90s by Gary Chapman, who was a pastor who wrote the book The Five Love Languages: How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate. Very official. He developed this idea based on his years of experience counseling couples, and he noticed patterns in how people actually express their love to their significant other. The book became a huge cultural phenomenon, and now love languages are something we all casually reference in conversations about relationships. I'm sure you've definitely heard of the term love language or have had someone talk about their love language, but didn't really know where it actually came from. And to me, it's a little crazy to think that the concept was only introduced in the 90s. It is 2025, but that doesn't feel too long ago. So it's really incredible how it became such a revolution in the way that we talk about love. It's important to note, though, that love languages aren't rooted in hardcore science. They're quite literally just based on this guy Gary's observations rather than research. But over the years, studies have found that people do feel more valued in relationships when their love language is acknowledged. At the end of the day, there's no one right way to express love. Getting into it, what are the 5 love languages? Each one represents a different way we give and receive love. And typically, we all have a dominant love language, but most of us express love in a mix of these ways. And as I go through them, definitely think about the ones that resonate most with you. This episode is really meant to help you identify how you receive love and the way that you give it to others. Starting off strong with one of the most common love languages in Western cultures, words of affirmation. This is all about verbal expressions of love. So think compliments or encouragement or just kind words, really. Saying things like, I really appreciated that you made me coffee this morning, or you look beautiful today. It can go a long way for someone whose love language is words of affirmation. People who value this language also appreciate being recognized for their achievements and feeling verbally supported. On the other side, they can feel really unloved during conflict if their partner withdraws or is someone who runs away from conflict and doesn't like to communicate about it. So it's really interesting that words of affirmation is a love language that many people identify with or feel like is their predominant love language, because communication is one of the, or verbal communication is one of the major issues in many relationships that couples counselors and therapists talk about all the time. It's how can you better communicate with your partner so that they can feel loved. So like I said earlier, all of these love languages are just general ideas of how Gary Chapman saw that his couples displayed their love to their significant other. But for some people, it really comes down to how those words are being communicated or what words of affirmation you're telling them, because it's not just compliments at the end of the day. Number 2, quality time. This one is huge for me, and I know my fellow long distance couples will definitely relate. Quality time is all about undivided attention, being present with someone rather than just physically near them. For people who prioritize this love language, how you spend your time together matters. It can be uninterrupted FaceTime calls, or dedicated date nights, or simply just having a deep conversation without scrolling on your phone or being distracted by something else. It's about making intentional space for each other in your own daily lives as you go about your routine. Number 3, acts of service. This is definitely my girlfriend's love language, and honestly, I'm so grateful that it is. Acts of service are all about actions speaking louder than words. It's when someone expresses love by doing things that make your life easier, whether it's helping with chores, cooking a meal, or just, I don't know, taking on responsibilities without being asked. Like for me, I have a very busy schedule a lot of the time. And even when we're together, there's things that I need to do that make me feel overwhelmed. But having someone whose love language is acts of service, they just know what you need and when you need it. And having that just, it just makes me feel so loved that someone pays attention to the little details of my life and my emotions, that they're able to do something for me to make me feel less stressed and anxious. So, for someone who values acts of service, those small, thoughtful actions can mean the most. If your partner has a long day at work, having dinner ready for them or handling a task that they've been dreading can be a major sign of love for that person. Number 4, physical touch. A lot of people list this as their top love language, but it's actually not as commonly expressed as you'd think. Kind of similar to words of affirmation. Like, you think you want your partner to always be telling you how much they love you or how beautiful you are all the time, but some people need specific types of words at a specific time. It's not all just I love you or how beautiful you look in the morning. Physical touch is not as commonly expressed, mostly because of cultural or social norms. So, for queer couples, interracial couples, or even people who just aren't used to public displays of affection, this love language can come with added layers of complexity. But physical touch, just as a human being, is so important. It's quite literally a basic human need. In relationships, this can look like holding hands, kissing, hugging, or even just resting your hand on your partner while you're talking. It's about the closeness that allows you two to feel like you're the only people in the world, both physically and emotionally. Like I mentioned earlier, love languages are heavily influenced by cultural norms as well. In some cultures, acts of service are the default way to show love, like cooking for your family or taking care of household tasks, while in other cultures, words of affirmation might not be as common due to more reserved communication styles. In Caribbean culture, for example, shout out to my Guyanese people, expressions of love often lead towards acts of service, like your sweet mother making dinner after coming home from a long day at work, which is really her way of saying, I love you, not necessarily verbal expressions of affirmation. Even if your family is from America, I'd love to hear how your cultural background has influenced your own love language. And last but not least is gift giving. A common misconception about this love language is that it's materialistic. But for many people who have this as one of their predominant love languages, it's really about the thought behind the gift. The gift doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be a Rolex or a Chanel bag. It can be something as simple as a handwritten letter or a small token that shows that you were thinking about that person. For people who love receiving gifts, it's less about the thing itself and more about what it represents. A tangible reminder that the person that you love cares about you. Something that my aunt used to do all the time when she would travel, when she worked for the CDC, she would always bring back my cousin and I a memento from wherever she was in the United States. She would travel around the States a lot, and sometimes it was a snow globe, other times it was a book. But just knowing that she would bring something for us and having that expectation really just created a sense of excitement and closeness. And the thought that she was thinking about me and my cousin made us feel really loved. Before my current relationship, I would have told you that my love language was receiving gifts. But over time, I've realized I value quality time and acts of service way more. Physical touch and words of affirmation are definitely up there for me too. But given the point of life that I'm in and the relationship, like I'm in a long distance relationship, it's definitely shifted my perspective on the types of love languages that I value. And that's the thing. Our love languages do shift over time, depending on our experiences and the relationship that we're in. It's important to check in with yourself and your partner every once in a while to see if the way that you both are giving and receiving love has changed so that you can adapt that to your relationship and make it stronger. There are definitely misconceptions about love languages, like who they can and can't be for, or that if you don't fit into a specific box, something is wrong with you or your relationship. Here are a few common misconceptions about love languages and the reality of why they're wrong. One of the primary beliefs around love languages is that you only have one. But in reality, most people have a combination of love languages. You might have a dominant one, but all five likely play a role in how you give and receive love. Just because words of affirmation is your top love language that doesn't mean that you don't appreciate quality time or acts of service. The second misconception is that if you or your partner have different love languages, it just won't work. Having different love languages doesn't mean that you're incompatible with someone. It just means that you need to communicate better. Someone who values quality time, dating someone who expresses love through acts of service, might feel unloved unless they realize that their partner cooking for them or handling errands is their way of saying, I love you. So it's really important for you to be able to say, hey, I really value when you tell me the ways that you love me or share your appreciation of the things that I do. If words of affirmation is your love language. Number 3, love languages are just for romantic relationships, when in fact that is not true, or it doesn't have to be. Love languages, again, are ways in which we give and receive love or express our love towards other people, and they apply to all relationships, whether it's romantic, friendship, familial, or even in work dynamics. In friendships, quality time might look like FaceTiming your bestie every Sunday, and that's really important for maintaining your relationship and showing up for your friend to show them that you do in fact love them. In family, acts of service might be a parent making sure that you're always fed. And that's definitely something that my mom was incredibly great at. She would always, always, always have some kind of comfort food available for me all the time when I was going through a breakup in high school or even in college. When I was stuck eating dining hall food and I called to complain to her about how terrible it was, she would cook my favorite meals and literally bring it to me. And that is beautiful. If you haven't already, take a moment to reflect on your own love language. Rank them from most important to least. And if you're in a relationship, have your partner do the same. Talk about it over dinner, or if you're single, journal about what kind of love language you'd love to receive in your next relationship. I fully believe in manifestation, so taking pen to paper to write down the type of love you want to receive will send a signal out to the universe telling it exactly what you're ready for. And I want to hear from you. Leave a comment on this week's episode and let me know what your love language is. If you found this episode helpful, I'd love for you to rate this podcast wherever you listen. It really helps the show grow, and I just appreciate it so much. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Happy Valentine's Day! Thank you so much for tuning in. If this episode resonated with you or would be helpful for someone you know, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube and share it with a friend. You can also follow the podcast on Instagram at and.everything.inbetween for updates, and you can find me on Instagram at victoria.liverpool. This podcast is sound designed and edited by Misty Avenger. Music for this podcast is The Dude by Matt Large, courtesy of Epidemic Sound. Details provided in the description. Remember, episodes drop weekly on Sundays at 7 p.m. Until then, keep growing, glowing, and remember, you got this.